Search for survivors at the Algo Mall was on, and then it was off, and then after an appeal from the Premier, it was back on again. This story is proving to be highly unusual in a number of ways, and questions will be asked about accountability and leadership. Queen's Park Bureau Chief Alan Carter joins us now with more on that story from our studio at Queen Park. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, Leslie. And it was that phone call from the Premier last night that apparently caused the rethink of the strategy, the rescue strategy in Elliott Lake. And a lot of people are asking the question, why did it take that phone call? Why did rescue officials on the ground not come to the same conclusion on their own?
Crews quickly put up flags ahead of a hastily called news conference, where Premier Dalton McGuinty explains his decision to urge rescuers to redouble their efforts in Elliott Lake.
There is another option, and that option involves beginning to dismantle the building from the outside. Now, people need to understand there is real risk associated with this.
Hours after rescuers called off the search and in the face of growing anger, the Premier issued a statement saying rescue efforts would resume. Why the delay? McGuinty says now is not the time for those questions.
Some may want to engage in some kind of a blame game. I just don't really think that's appropriate. I think what we need to be focused on, there will be a time for questions that need to be asked.
Since the September 11th terror attacks, the measure of crisis leadership has changed. George Bush was accused of not caring when it was felt he didn't respond fast enough after Hurricane Katrina, something Obama's team learned after tornadoes hit the southern U.S. in 2011. The key is to be seen doing something, says Chris Eby of the PR firm Navigator.
People expect to see their political leaders involved. A bureaucratic response is not acceptable. They want leadership. They don't want a manager.
In Elliott Lake, the word from the local MPP is send everything you can.
The people here in Northern Ontario or here in Elliott Lake need these services.
Even political rivals know that criticism has no place in an unfolding tragedy.
You know, there's certainly some folks who will have much to say about this afterwards, but right now, I think the most important thing to do is to focus on getting folks out.
The Premier calls what's left of the Algo Centre Mall a house of cards. The priority must be on a possible rescue before there can be answers about why it took hours for rescuers to decide to resume search efforts.
Now, expect there to be some very tough questions in the days ahead, especially about that time between when the rescue efforts were called off and Premier making that phone call. The Premier's office already indicating that the Premier will hold an availability to talk about the situation in Elliott Lake here at Queen's Park tomorrow. We just don't know at what time yet. Leslie?
Alan Carter, Queen's Park with the latest. Thanks, Alan.